Welcome to Let Me Know How It Is, a podcast about all things geek. We've all seen some of our favorite comic series come to an end unceremoniously, but what if you had the power to bring one back for one more issue? Which one would you pick? Today we're going over which comics we'd like back for one more go-around. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Alright, let's go. So, for today we're imagining that if we got a chance to pick out any comic series that has ended or was canceled, that we could get the band back together for just one more issue. I'm Zach Slater.
I'm Frank Melman.
I'm Tommy Smithereens.
I'm Clifton.
Okay, so we are doing this round robin style, so we acknowledge that's already a bit of a cheat because we're each saying 3 comic series that we want, not one more series. So let's get started.
So this was a difficult. I thought it'd be a lot easier to come out with this particular topic just because of my love of comics and such. But I found it very difficult to come up with them because comic books likes to rehash ideas, and they do it quite frequently. But it's hard to keep up as to when they revisit something. But the one that jumps out the most to me is Planetary by Warren Ellis and Cassidy.
John Cassidy.
John Cassidy. I love that book. It was very short due to its publication history. You never knew when the issue was dropping. I believe it was only 27 issues over the course of 6 years or some absurd amount of years that it shouldn't have been that short to publish such a short run. But I loved it. I would love that they revisit that universe. I think it came out of Wildstorm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I couldn't get enough of the books, the art.
So, hey, let me ask you a question, really. So, clue us in a little bit more on this. So, was this book canceled, or did it actually wrap up? Like, what's the scenario here? Like, was it just something you love that you just want back for one more issue, or was there like a plot point in there that didn't get tied up that you want to see like brought back?
Oh, there's several plot points that were brought up that never got brought back, just because of the nature of the characters. I never see them push the boundaries of how far the characters would go in that regard. Because hell, I never really. I mean, you have characters that have been around for decades with thousands of issues based upon their history and what they've done. But with Planetary, you just get that, nothing more, nothing revisited. When it finally ended, in which they gave us a final issue that wrapped up the major storyline, there were other storylines that went on as well as the fact of it pushed it to a new chapter within the book. The characters wrapped up their main storyline, but didn't mean their lives ended. They continued to live another day. In fact, their numbers grew. They vanquished the great evil that they tried to vanquish, but who's to say that there was another issue or another problem that wouldn't arise as a result of it? I was totally engrossed with the book. I loved every minute of it. Even took forever. I mean, it took like Battle Chasers forever in its publication history.
Speaking of that, Tommy, I was looking just to see, to have the dates right. It says that it had an initial preview in September of 1998 in Gen 13 number 33, and then in issue 6 of C23, whatever that book was.
Mm-hmm.
And then the series ran for 27 issues, not counting, I guess, like Planetary Batman or Planetary JLA.
Yes.
Or Planetary Authority. Ran for 27 issues from April 1999 to October 2009.
10 years.
Yeah, it took 10 years for 27 issues.
Yeah, so that's absurd, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so Frank, go over that one more time. So the 27 issues includes like the Batman one shot and the Authority, or that's not in there?
That's not in there.
No, it's not.
That doesn't include. No, because like the JLA Planetary is not really. It's not really set with it. It's kind of like an Elseworlds for it. JLA, Planetary Authority and Batman Authority is definitely part of the continuity of the book, but it's not. Those issues aren't counted as like the 27 produced between Warren Ellis and John Cassidy. Gotcha. I agree with Tommy. It's one of those things where what's really cool about that book is like you'll get each issue is different archetypal stuff. So you'll have one issue that's based on superheroes, and one issue that's like based on mystical characters. There's like a John Constantine archetype, but sometimes you'll get stuff like there's a John Woo issue.
Yes,
early on.
That sounds great.
Like a high concept action issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Yeah, there's a lot of that kind of stuff where he basically, each issue opens up a world that quote unquote, from like watching that stuff, watching John Woo movies, or watching or reading superhero comics, or reading Vertigo or whatever. Or at one point, they dip their toe into Marvel as archetype. So it's one of the things where I agree with Tommy that's definitely a book that could have another issue, if not more of a series, because each issue unto itself was kind of like, here's the universe. It's kind of like, like having a different comic book, like a team up issue where full well, like Spider-Man's universe is completely different than, say, I don't know, Guardians of the Galaxy or Black Panther or whatever. Or in some, like there's a Doc Savage archetype in it, Doc Brass.
I love Doc Brass.
Yeah, Doc Brass is awesome. So, it's one of those things where I agree with Tommy. It would be really, really cool to see another issue of Planetary, but I don't think I would want to stop with just one. So,
no, I agree, but to me, it's the revisit of that universe to say, just to flesh it out. You're right. I would not stop with just one, but to me, it was an incredible series. I mean, it got nominated for an Eisner Award, twice, if not three times within its short issue run.
Right.
It was an amazing book, and on top of that, it paid homage to everything concerning comics and became something else on its own in doing that.
Okay.
And all this in the small window of 27 issues.
Yep.
Let me ask you to do a little bit of kind of teeing up what the hook of the book is, just for anybody listening that doesn't know what Planetary is at all. Like what's sort of the concept here?
Okay, if I'm not mistaken, the concept is basically an alternate universe in which certain things are stunted within that universe, based upon a obscure power or, for lack of a term, villainy. Out comes this individual who is what they call a boom baby. In this universe, there's a group of individuals with a set task born on the beginning of the century. What I mean by that is this person was born on January 1st, 1900. And as a result of being born I said boom baby. That's that's static.
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute. That's the Dakota universe, right?
Yeah, that is the Dakota universe. But basically, these unique individuals are given a task unbeknownst to them, in which they discover over time. There are other individuals with that same birth date, in which they do other things, but we're specifically concentrating on one particular individual within Planetary. Now, within his I'm trying to be vague as anything because I want people to.
Well, you're giving, not to cut you off, but Tommy, you're giving more like the you're peeling back layers. I mean, basically, they were what, the archaeologists of the impossible? Wasn't that what it was?
Yeah, it was the archaeologists of impossible. But basically, yeah, you're right. I am peeling layers because I'm looking at the individual Elijah Snow,
right,
is what the book is concerning or all about. But basically, he was an archaeologist of the impossible, in which what he did was he collected certain things that were lost to their universe. And that's what opened the door to the possibility of showing homage to different things concerning comics. Is that kind of right, Frank?
Yeah, because basically, like a lot of times, it was the one of the catchphrases for the book was it's a weird world. Let's keep it that way. And basically, they were, it was Elijah Snow is your entry character. He's the one that's recruited to be part of the Planetary group. Chiquita Wagner and then the drummer are the three that like the two characters that make up the partnership of the three of them. And basically, they explore within their universe all of these various, like I said, like the John Woo stuff or the Doc Brass or the Doc Savage stuff and on and on. Every issue is the three of them basically encountering like a new weird phenomenon or a weird artifact or something from that, within their universe that was bleeding into it, right? Right, Tommy?
Yeah, it would be so much pop culture stuff such as Godzilla, Tarzan, Sherlock Holmes. I love Doc Savage, as well as maybe Thor, Hulk, Fantastic Four. But it was an amalgamation of such things that made it even more interesting.
Right.
Okay.
Without having to step on those trademarks. I mean, it's like you knew what they were talking about without saying what they were talking about.
Yeah, you could basically everything that you could think of that was within the realm of like fiction or pop culture could pop up in this book.
Okay, yeah. So that's what I was gonna. It sounds kind of like a stew. Like whatever you got, like whatever you want to do for this month, just throw it in. Like we're gonna do, I don't know, like the samurai movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
or something like that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that sounds cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was my pick. Is give me one more. Give me issue 28 of Planetary, basically.
Okay. No,
And
it's a
don't
good
worry,
pick.
and it fits their erratic publishing because hell, wait 10 years, it wouldn't be a surprise. They could just jump right into it,
Right.
and no one would notice.
Right.
Yeah.
Get a new issue.
It could be right on schedule.
Yeah. They
Yeah.
could be working on it for all we know. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right. Who wants to go next?
I'll go next.
Okay.
So I was thinking about this, and I agree with Tommy. I thought it'd be a lot easier when we decided we were talking about possible topics for this week. I'm like, oh, that should be no problem. There's a million comics that I've enjoyed over the years, and I'm like, oh, it'd be cool if that came back. But that was the problem I kept running into. Was like, well, if it came back, then it's not the same thing as a single issue wrapping stuff up. And then a lot of times with stuff that did wrap up, I'm like, well, I like the wrap up, I like the ending, I like it, even if it was. The issue before was the big battle or dealing with the big bad or whatever, and then the next issue was an epilogue. I enjoyed the epilogue. So it took a while, and then I had one that I knew that I wanted to do, and I knew it was the ending I thought it was not what it was. Like the series goes on for 8 more issues, but that particular plot thread never got picked up, so I didn't want to go with that one. So the one that I chose was Secret Six Volume 3, number 36 is the last issue of that run, and it leads into New 52 and Flashpoint.
Okay.
So it was one of those things where.
So this is not to sorry to cut you off. So this is not the relaunch that they did.
No.
In New 52. Okay.
No, this is the one right before it. This is the team is like Ragdoll and Catman, Deadshot, Jeanette.
I love Ragdoll.
Yeah. How could you not? Jeanette, Scandal, Bane, and I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's the group. But basically, they'd set up. I won't spoil it for you. But if you've seen Suicide Squad: Hell to Pay, which is kind of like kind of an adaptation of the storyline where the Secret Six go to hell. Basically, the idea being that if there's a card, that's a get out of hell free card, you basically can redeem it to get someone who's died to come back. And they set up the storyline in a couple issues before. It's like 33 or 31 to 33, and then the last 3 issues are 34, 5, and 6. Well, Gail Simone and Jim Calafiore are the ones that are the main ones that worked on these issues. And the reason I thought about it, and I think I've talked about it with Tommy before, is when the Secret Six go to hell and they're all they're trying to figure out who they're going to resurrect with this card. There's a moment in it where Bane has sort of been on this trajectory since issue 1 of this 3rd volume of sort of getting to a point where he's kind of redeeming himself, and he's going to get to the point where he's not on Venom, and he's not really because Gail Simone sort of plays him as being like really internally conflicted about the fact that he's a slave to being on Venom.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he's trying to wean himself off. He's being sort of a father figure to Scandal, even though Scandal's dad is Vandal Savage. He's trying to basically help her out, and then, so they make this choice in hell about what they're going to do. Well, at one point he mentions offhandedly to like these demonic characters, surely I've found a way to redeem myself. I'm being a better person, and they laugh at him and they tell him, oh, you're already damned. There's nothing you can do. All this stuff that you've been doing for like 3 years of this book is like, it's nonsense. Why are you even bothering? All the other stuff won't equate, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you get to like the last issue and you can see that he's made this turn in his head of like, screw it, I'm going back to villainy. And they basically decide they're gonna try and break Batman again, but this time they're gonna do it. He's gonna have the Six do it by taking out like the rest of the Bat family, like Azrael and Robin and Batgirl. Well, it blows up in their face because it's around the time of Dick Grayson Batman. All these heroes show up and it ends with them, with Bane getting locked up. Well, I'd want an issue 37 because. And while there's no real way to know, I always thought that, for most of the stories you read, whether it's like Faust or any of those type of, let's make a deal with the devil type things, the devil never plays honestly with you, right?
Right.
So I'd always have the thought of like, maybe it's just something they said to Bane was screw with him.
Just to take him out the running for
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, just to take him off, basically take him off his path and put him back to being, put him basically back to being a villain, quote unquote.
Right.
I mean, it's a book about mostly villains anyway. So why? But I'm saying that's my thing is like I always wanted to see even an epilogue bit. And it's one of those things that because of Flashpoint and because of New 52, it totally derailed all of the plans and all the stuff that was going on, all the momentum in this book. When it could have easily been a book that could have gone on like the Green Lantern stuff that really wasn't touched by Flashpoint, or the Batman franchise stuff that wasn't touched by Flashpoint. There's no reason why Secret Six couldn't have kept its own little corner of the universe and not been affected. But,
right. Yeah. And when it came back, like it sort of like left this stuff alone. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it was a totally different book. I mean,
Yeah,
not that version of Secret Six is bad. It's just completely different.
No, I mean, it was a funny relaunch. I remember though, like it seemed really out of place in the New 52. It seemed like kind of like a relic that they were bringing back. Not that it was that old or anything. Like, I mean, by that time,
right,
it had only been out of print like what, maybe 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about that was the fact that like the characters and like there's some characters that obviously like Catman and some of the other more popular characters do cross, basically make that over into the New 52 Secret Six. But there's a mystery about who some of the characters are. When that's a reveal, it's kind of like, okay, but I didn't need that character to be ever, at all what that character, I don't want to spoil stuff for people because that's not what we're here for tonight. But the idea that, it didn't have, I mean, it had a similar feel, but like I said, the having to stop or it felt very abrupt. Like it just got canceled to be canceled because they had to shove it, the New 52 and Flashpoint stuff was where they were going. So,
right.
Yeah, that's my first choice would be, I would definitely go with Secret Six Volume 3, number 37.
No, it was a fun book. I remember it. And Frank, like we've all talked like over the years and everything, how we think that book is kind of crucial as far as like being like the Bane resurgence that the character underwent after that, where like suddenly the character was taken seriously again.
I mean, you and I have talked, Zach, about the fact that when Bane's first introduced in the Chuck Dixon stuff and Nightfall and all that, I mean, he's very much, not to get, again, I'm surprised we're mentioning this character as much as we are, or maybe than I am. He's very much an evil Doc Savage when he first is introduced.
Yeah.
He's very much like mind in his body. He's using these, he's using venom to basically make himself stronger, but at the same time, he's still got he's got a crew, and this crew is very similar to Doc Savage. He's got a mind, he's very intelligent. He's got a plan of how he's going to take out Batman. And then all of a sudden it sort of goes away from all that. And it's just, he's a musclehead with who looks like a luchador with venom.
Right.
But yeah, Gail Simone starts to put him back on the path of being more like what he started out as. And it was just a shame that it had to be derailed by, I mean, I would also argue another book that helps do that is the Gotham Knights by Devin Grayson stuff. If you haven't read that, a lot of that is because around the same time of all this stuff, but right before it, there was a slight push or a slight hint of the fact that Thomas Wayne had spent some time down in Santa Prisca.
Okay.
And that Bane might be Bane Wayne.
Right.
Which is an odd idea, but it was definitely an idea that was, in that book especially. So you have a certain nobility start to emerge there as well.
Yeah.
So.
No, I remember it was always a very, very cool series, and it had kind of like a Suicide Squad feel, but wasn't like it was
right.
like, it was similar in the sense that it was a bad guy book.
Right.
Right. And I think the fact that also like Deadshot was a big player in it also like really kind of made it very, very tough to distinguish from Suicide Squad. But no, I just think what I liked about that book too is that the roster would change.
Sure.
From time to time and everything. Yeah. And there was, if I'm not mistaken, so like John Ostrander did a couple of fill-in issues over there. And I think that there was like a Deadshot like origin issue.
Yeah. It's around the time of Blackest Night. Like he comes in and writes some of that stuff because you have villains coming back from Belle Reve and come back from the dead. And it's sort of it's like a one shot, I think, about Suicide Squad, I believe or all I know is you're right around that time Ostrander did some stuff, and it definitely has that, that pedigree of the Ostrander Suicide Squad stuff for sure.
Yeah. No, it's a great issue. It's one of my favorite issues in that run, as well as also like the cover of that issue, which I could picture right now is maybe like one of my favorite drawings of Deadshot ever.
Okay.
You know what I mean? We'll post it on the website,
Sure.
But no, I mean, a lot of really cool stuff. And I mean, like, I'm shocked that we didn't talk about Catman that much in this. I mean, who's really, I think, kind of like the anchor of the book.
Oh, yeah.
But
well, again, it's one of the, if you're looking at characters that Gail Simone definitely like sort of took out of out of a joke pile, out of a rubbish bin, and basically, put some attention and care and some polish on Catman's the other one, because prior to that, he had been in the Phil Hester Green Arrow stuff, and he was kind of like a joke at that point.
Right. Was that when he was like really overweight and yeah.
Yeah. And then Gale and Villains United and all that stuff basically put a lot of work into making Catman to be, what he is right now. So
and his Batman animated series appearance like resembles nothing
right.
of really like either version of him in the book at all. Like he's just like a guy in a suit.
Yeah.
Like running a cult, right?
Yeah.
Like it's who's not even named Catman in the episode, but he's named Thomas Blake, which is Catman in the comics. So no, okay.
That's my choice.
Good picks.
Thanks.
Picks. Planetary and Secret Six. I like it. All right, Clifton, what do you got?
Mine's also a DC one that was interrupted by some event changes, and that is Gotham Central, which we've talked a lot about on the show before, I believe.
Yes.
Just a quick synopsis for the new people. Gotham Central was basically like Hill Street Blues, but in Gotham City. So the premise was, what was it like to be just a normal cop in Batman City, dealing with the same villains that Batman deals with, but on the street level, like by the book.
Right.
And it ran 40 issues, but the last handful of issues were around the time that the Infinite Crisis big event was going on. So it went from being like a street level, like police procedural comic to being embroiled in a huge cosmic event at the end, which was definitely not what that book was about. And I mean, if I really wanted something, like some good stuff came out of the end of that, which I'll get into, but I would just say that like I would like an ending more in the spirit of how the book started than what it got wrapped up in.
Yeah, I agree with you 1,000% on this. It's such a bizarre finale that I think is I like Infinite Crisis. I really do.
Right, you too.
Me too.
But it's that's one of the things that I never like really quite forgave that event about, was that it's wrapped up Gotham Central in this really, really strange way.
Right.
Well, I love the fact, about that. Again, we're going to spoil a bunch of stuff tonight because we're talking about various things. But one of the things I love is like one of the Gotham detectives kills an Aquaman villain. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so bizarre. Like, again, it's such a bizarre moment, but like it's echoed in the actual issue. I think issue 1 or 2, where he just it's the fisherman.
Yeah.
And they get into it and he shoots him.
Yeah.
Right.
So
what has always struck me about that book, I mean, this is one of my favorite books of all time. It really is. It really is. But what struck me about that series, and I love it for this, is that it was able to be a book about Gotham City cops that didn't have Gordon, right? Because again, it came out in a time where it was after the Officer Down event where Jim Gordon gets shot and essentially retires from the force. So Jim Gordon's not the commissioner. There's a commissioner named Michael Akins,
right,
in this book. So it doesn't have Commissioner Gordon outside of an issue or two, and no Bullock. Bullock's like in a story arc, right?
Yeah,
and not like those two guys are not in. I mean, you get a lot of cool like Montoya stuff. It's a very, very important book for the Montoya character.
Right. And the one of the big things out of the end of it is that it does transition her to her turn as the Question.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which does come out of the final issues right before Infinite Crisis.
Yes.
But isn't like Bullock a cautionary tale in that book? Like he's done something that he's gotten himself in trouble for, and therefore like everyone sort of respects him and still, cares about him and loves him as a person. But for whatever reason, it's like, don't be like Bullock.
Yeah.
Don't end up like Bullock.
Well, so like I brought up Officer Down really quick. And the thing that gets me about that book, because like Gotham Central was this book that wasn't really selling quite up to standards that they had hoped. Right.
Mm.
But it was also a book that kind of got like every year it gets a little bit more popular. Like it's selling more now from what I've heard in interviews than it ever did when it was coming out new on the shelves.
Yeah.
Right. But the thing is like Officer Down never gets mentioned. And Officer Down is kind of like a really important like precursor to that series, right? Because it sets up, like I said, like why Jim Gordon's not in it, right? And why Jim Gordon is in the situation he's in the first issue. But it's also it's very important as to why Bullock is the cautionary tale that you're talking about in Gotham Central. Like that all spins out of Officer Down also.
Right.
You know? So yes, no, I'm sure we've done it in past episodes, but I highly recommend any listener out there that has not done it, pick up Gotham Central and try and track down Officer Down also.
Yes.
Anything else in there though? Like, I mean, God, one of my favorite Joker stories of all time is in that run too. Oh God, I love Gotham Central.
I love how creepy Mr. Freeze was. I mean, don't get me wrong. I understand that he's a foe to Batman and such, but to go get someone with the ice gun and actually use it on people and watch them break when they fall, it took it to a whole nother level of how the hell would you fight something like that without Batman?
Yeah.
Right. Oh yeah.
Does some cool stuff with the bat signal too, like as a set piece, you know, and kind of introduces a character that's she's like a temp at the police at the Central, at Gotham Central, at the precinct, and they talk about how she's a civilian technically, like she's not a cop, and she's the only one that has the keys to the bat signal.
Yeah.
So that there's a little bit of a separation between the police like using Batman, right? It's a civilian that's activating it.
Right.
Does that make sense? Yeah, she's a great character. Stacy, I think her name was, but
she's
the Gina of Gotham Central from Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yeah, basically. She's a civilian liaison. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, a lot of great characters there. And yeah, I mean, this is a funny, the creative team was interesting for this. So this was Greg Rucka and Ed Brubaker with Michael Lark on art for the most part. I think like Jock did an arc or two or something, but they basically, like, Brubaker was in charge of, I think, the night shift of cops.
Yeah, sounds about right.
And Rucka was in charge of the day shift, right? So like they would each kind of trade arcs back and forth. And then every couple of arcs, like every cycle, right? So like Rucka would do an arc, and then Brubaker would do an arc, and then after that cycle, they would do an arc together, right? That was co-written by both of them, which I thought was really kind of cool. And they apparently, like, the way that they broke it down was they separated it by like page count. They're like, all right, I'm doing all the Montoya stuff. You're doing all the Detective Driver stuff. I'll take this scene. You take that scene. And basically whoever turned in their stuff last, it was their job to kind of stitch all of the scenes together into an issue, right? To craft like all the connective stuff. Is that making sense? You guys get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And basically, and it was like Brubaker always. He was like, Ruck always beat me getting his stuff in before I did. So it was like Brubaker was like, I always had to do that. Yeah. Love the book. So, okay. So I'm going to go for my first one. I'm going to say Superior Foes of Spider-Man. Right? So
okay.
This went for 17 issues, and this book did get a proper ending. Like it wrapped up, right? This wasn't a situation where the book got canceled and like the rug got pulled out from under Nick Spencer, who was writing this, and Steve Lieber was on art. Like he actually got to end the series. But it came out at a time where it was kind of a bizarre period in the Spider-Man book. So this is when Dr. Octopus and Peter Parker had like a Freaky Friday thing, and Doc Ock's brain was in Peter's body.
Peter's body,
yeah.
So this is a fun book, like very much in the vein of Secret Six and everything. It was a bad guy book. This was sort of the C-level, if you could even call them that, level of Spider-Man villains. So it was Boomerang, it was Beetle, Shocker, Overdrive, Speed Demon, and they were like the Sinister Six, but there was only 5 of them. Right. And it was just such a great book. So it had like that Nick Spencer, like kind of humor in it. And like one of my favorite moments in there is there's a moment where they're debating whether or not they should call themselves the Sinister Six again. They're like, there's just 5 of us. Like we can't be we can't be the Sinister Six. And then one of them has the idea like, no, it's perfect, right? Because then they're going to be fighting the 5 of us, and everybody's going to be like, oh man, like where's the 6th one? What's going to happen?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So the reason I say this book though is like I would have liked to see this group go up against like the real Spider-Man one time, at least. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's, but like we do see some heroes in this book and everything, but we don't really get, like, they never fight Peter Parker Spider-Man, which I always thought was just kind of like an unfortunate timing thing of when this book came out, and like bits of it get brought back because Nick Spencer's on Amazing Spider-Man now, so at least Boomerang gets used from time to time, so it gets kind of like a nod here and there, but it's never quite exactly Superior Foes like issue 18 or anything like that. So
Right.
yeah, so that's my pick.
Cool.
Very nice.
All right, so all right, Tommy, we're back to you then. Number 2.
Okay. Yeah, which again was hard because I had to think. I don't like thinking.
It's overrated.
It is. It's very much overrated. My second choice was from a one-shot in which I loved a lot. In fact, Frank showed it to me because I didn't know this existed, so he brought it to my attention.
Okay.
And afterwards, it was like, well, damn, that's it. It was Superboy's Legion.
Okay. The two-parter.
The two-parter.
Yeah, okay.
But you gave it to me in a one-shot, which they combined it together. And I read it for the first time. This is Mark Farmer and Alan Davis's alternate universe in which Kal-El, instead of coming to the 20th century, winds up in the 30th century.
Yep.
And as a result of it, this is his new beginning into the DC universe instead of our current timeline.
Right.
I thought it was an introduction to an alternate world and that I wanted to visit more. And on top of that, Mark Farmer and Alan Davis have done an incredible amount of stuff in the past. I've loved their Fantastic Four work. I love their Excalibur work. Hell, they did The Nail.
Mm-hmm.
The list goes on and on as to how much stuff they've done that I've enjoyed. It ends almost like here's a taste, and that's it.
Yes.
and it highlights everything I love about the Legion. It includes all sorts of characters and brings in the past of what we know Superman to be, except into a 1,000-year future.
Right.
It just dipped its toe in what it could have become. I would have liked to see more of it crafted up. Now, I don't want to get to the specifics of what goes on, but basically it's just Superman starting on the 30th century, raised by R.J. Brand as opposed to the Kents.
R.J. Brand being the guy who forms the Legion.
Yes. And you see Superboy beginning. I mean, to me, it begs the question, ultimately, would the Legion have fallen if they knew nothing, completely nothing of Superboy? And Superboy as a character itself, could he be that same inspiration 1,000 years in the future with them never knowing he existed, you know?
Right, because traditionally it's they see his exploits in the 20th century, and then they're like, oh, well, he does all this stuff as a kid, as a teenager, and then he does all this stuff as Superman, and therefore, 1,000 years in the future, they decide we want to be like him, and eventually invite him to join their superhero club.
And that's the Legion that we've come to know and love of over these years.
Right.
But we've taken them totally out of the equation and still invested them into the same group that inspired him, not inspired him, but they were inspired by, but never knowing he existed. So it's an interesting what if that I enjoyed for just 2 issues, but they never revisited. It's not even like with Another Nail, which is the sequel to The Nail.
Okay.
The other thing I like about that is the fact that it's one of those. It's like, oh, that's cool. It's a cool idea to put Superboy, in 1,000 years in the future and have him. That's where he starts. That's his starting point. It's also you also sort of have a moment of, wait a minute. So that means Superman wasn't around for anything that's gone 1,000 years in the past. Yes. And that definitely affects how things play out.
Okay. Huh.
So, yeah.
This was like in the 90s? Was that when this came out?
I think this came out 2010, 2011, I want to believe. Yeah, it's old.
No kidding.
Yeah, it's a good one.
And this didn't touch when Jeff Johns was sort of doing like his Legion of Superhero stuff, and he was, correct me if I'm wrong, right? Like he was bringing back the idea that Clark was part of the Legion when he was growing up, right?
Yes, that's like that stuff comes all out of the what does that come out? Because you have Superman and the Legion of Superheroes, and basically it's kind of a rebranding with basically going back to what had happened before.
Okay.
So yeah, February and March of 2001 is when it came
2001. Out. Yeah, I was about to say that. 2001. I made a mistake.
Yeah. It's a great looking book. It's a lot of fun. You know, if you like the concept at all, highly recommend that one too.
Yeah. You guys might have to loan me this one. I got to check it out. It sounds cool.
It's very cool. Yeah.
You guys have sold me on it. Okay. So, all right. So who's up next? So Frank, you're up.
I'm up. All right. So this one we've talked about before when we talked about the DC animation stuff a little bit. The idea that, again, you know, big events, you know, happen to derail momentum in comics. And for this one, it's Batman 650, which is the end of Judd Winnick's run on Batman. I mean, he wrote some more issues later, but for me, it's one of those things where it's not. I mean, granted, Batman obviously hasn't stopped because it's still going. But the idea for this one was like, you know, within the parameters, we talked a little bit about the idea of, you know, having a chance to do one more issue, and they kind of do, but it's not the same because this one is the title is called, I wanted to tell the title of it's called "All They Do Is Watch Us Kill," right? And it's basically the end of, it's the climax of Under the Red Hood, where it's basically Red Hood and Batman and Joker in the apartment. Have you seen the animated?
Right.
And the fact that in the comic, it gets interrupted because of, again, Infinite Crisis. and Infinite Crisis starts off where they drop Chemo, the big chemical soup villain of the Metal Men.
They drop him out of a plane on Bloodhaven.
Right, on Bloodhaven, where Nightwing usually does his thing. They drop him on Bloodhaven.
So horrific.
Oh, it's awful. And then that's
it's basically an atomic bomb set off in this.
Yeah, the villains drop a bomb. The society basically, you know, the society of supervillains drop this chemical monster on this bomb, basically, you know, wiping out Bloodhaven. But the thing about it was, again, you know, it's one of those situations where Judd Winnick has built this momentum, and the artist in the issue is Eric Battle. Winnick has built, you know, since he brought back Jason Todd, you know, spoiler alert, the Red Hood, from the time he's brought him back, there's been this, you know, this whole thing of what's he going to do? Why is he there? Is he going to help Batman and the rest of the Bat family out? Is he going to be, is he going to kill the Joker? What's he going to do? And finally it comes to a head in 650, and it's a great issue. And then you get to the end and it's like Infinite Crisis strikes, and then it's not really resolved. It's resolved in the animated, right?
Yeah.
But it's definitely not resolved. It's not 651. 651, I believe, is a James Robinson issue. It starts with a Two-Face 4-issue arc.
Okay, so it jumps into the 1 year later stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, like right after. Okay.
Face the Face.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I remember Gotham Central. I keep forgetting that Under the Red Hood also got tangled up in the Infinite Crisis stuff.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me that I still like this event.
Oh, I love Infinite Crisis. I think again, as we've talked in other episodes, it's one of those things where at the time it's a culmination of like 5 years of DC stuff that finally comes to a head. But it's also one of those things of, I would have liked 651 to be either an epilogue or something where, and I'm sure, you know, and again, like I said, when it gets to do it, and when he wrote the script for the animated, he gets to play it out better. But, and then, you know, Batman Annual 20, I think it's 25 is the one that picks up Jason's story and shows where he ends up next. But it doesn't really explain, I mean, it explains like how he gets to where he is next and what are the decisions, but it's more of like a kind of a filling in the blank of where Jason had been before that. And again, that's addressed in the animated.
Right. Yeah, that's true. And so, and this is a book I never really read, but so Winnick also jumped on Green Arrow.
Yes.
And did a run on Green Arrow. And then I remember in solicitations that he was going to have Jason as the Red Hood pop up for some of that, for a sort story arc in there that I think was going to have Batman as a crossover thing in there. And I never got around to reading that stuff, but it's interesting you bring him up because like it was just announced that he's going back to Green Arrow to do a little. Yeah.
I heard that.
Like this week.
Okay.
It was announced. Yeah.
I mean, Winnick's a great writer. I've always enjoyed his stuff. I enjoyed his stuff in Green Lantern. I enjoyed his Green Arrow, and his Batman stuff was terrific. So he's good. I mean, I'll be picking up Green Arrow then.
Yeah. No, yeah, his Batman stuff doesn't get talked about enough. I agree with you. Yeah.
But no, that would be my second choice because it was as much as I like it and the build up and stuff, that ending is, as much as I love Infinite Crisis, as much as I love that story arc, I would have liked to have seen another issue to be able to play out the even if it's a scene of them at Wayne Manor and all the issues, them talking about what happened, that would be fine. But the fact that it's kind of like, yeah, it happened. And then a monumental crisis event happened. And now we're not really going to deal with what we did with the Joker and all that stuff. So,
right. Oh, I'm impressed. You guys are all picking awesome stuff here. So, all right. So Clifton, you have a second one?
Yeah, and I think I'm actually going to do my second and third together because they're pretty much connected and the reasons are the same behind why we don't have issues. So it's 2 comic books. They've technically not ended. They've technically not been canceled, but we've not had them in a while, and there's no word on if we'll get them again. And it's Afterlife with Archie and Chilling Adventures of Sabrina.
Yes, that was good.
Both books have the same writer, Roberto Aguirre Sacasa. Afterlife with Archie has art by Francesco Francavilla, and Chilling Adventures of Sabrina has art by Robert Hack. They've been MIA for a little while now. I think the reason is because Roberto Aguirre Sacasa is the showrunner on Riverdale.
Yeah, I was going to say he's kind of busy with some show, right?
Yeah, and Chilling Adventures of Sabrina on Netflix, and Katie Keene on CW.
Wow.
So I think he's just been kind of busy, and I think that has kept him from writing the scripts for these comics for a few years now.
He's show running 3 shows. I didn't know he was doing all 3 of those.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God. Oh, his diet must be terrible.
He's a guy that I think doesn't get enough. Again, we're talking about writers that are of that time. I mean, granted, the Sabrina stuff and the Archie stuff is closer to now. It's not so bad,
right?
But there, at one point at Marvel, he had Marvel the number 4 book, which is about Fantastic Four, which was him and I want to say Mark Morales, and I can't remember who the artist was. Mark Morales was doing the inks, but it was a great. Again, he's really good at character stuff, so it's a really good character, a lot of good character pieces about the Fantastic Four.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember the setup for his 4 series was that they went bankrupt.
Yes, that's right.
So they had to move out of Baxter Building. They didn't have all their money behind them for their research.
I remember that stuff.
And Mr. Fantastic had to become a teacher. Is that right?
I believe so.
Or was Invisible Woman a teacher? One of them had to become a teacher.
Yeah,
that was him. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
That's one of the first things he did in comics, I believe, was that 4 series, and it's really good. It's a really good book that doesn't. When you think about Fantastic Four stuff, nobody ever mentions it.
Oh man, no,
we'll mention it here, but I'm saying in general, you hear about, and again, not that I'm knocking like Hickman or Matt Fraction or any of those people that have done any of that kind of stuff. I don't know if Matt Fraction did Fantastic Four, but Hickman did. But yeah, the 4 book is really good. What I always liked about Aguirre Sacasa was the fact that he just really got nailed character stuff really well. So
right, and the Afterlife with Archie predates the Riverdale series, but a lot of the portrayals of the characters are similar.
Okay,
especially Cheryl Blossom.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I think I think it's Afterlife with Archie that really makes her the crazy one. and her brother is alive in Afterlife with Archie, where he's dead by the beginning of Riverdale. And so their relationship is portrayed creepy in the real time instead of just in flashback or story like in Riverdale.
This was when Afterlife with Archie came out. This was a time when Archie Comics was I couldn't ignore them anymore. It was I just thought as a company, they were really doing some daring stuff. Who would have thought that they were going to do a horror, zombie Archie issue? And there was also around the same time.
And it's a hard horror. It's a hard horror comic book. It's gory and bloody and doesn't hold back.
Yeah. And at the same time, they were doing like those what if comics. It was what if Archie married Betty? And then the next one was what if Archie married Veronica? And then there was he crossed over.
Pretty depressing.
Yeah, he crossed over with the Predator at one point. I just thought they were doing some really cool stuff. But yeah, Afterlife is definitely the standout for me. And I never got around to reading Chilling Adventures, but Afterlife with Archie, I'm not going to spoil it or anything. I don't want to say anything about it, but this is not an ounce of hubris in what I'm saying. Sakasa wrote, quite frankly, the most emotional scene in a comic book I've ever read in my entire life.
Oh wow! Okay.
Like I have had absolutely the most like emotional reaction to that book more than anything else I've read in my lifetime of reading comics.
Wow.
Yeah.
Then just a quick summary for people who don't know. It is basically there's a zombie outbreak in Riverdale. Is the premise of Afterlife with Archie.
Sounds so good.
So it's all the Archie characters like all of them, Jughead, Betty, Veronica, Cheryl, Archie, everyone, Moose, Reggie. It's what happens like with a zombie outbreak. And we're talking like Walking Dead level of like drama and gore.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, it's such a great book.
I remember, Clifton, you put me on it, and when I read it, I couldn't believe it. Just because of the nature of the characters and what they go through, I thought it'd be like comical or, jokey, something. Or and then every time I refer back to Clifton, I was like, they did that? Really?
Right.
And it kept going. It was. But Clifton was right to compare it to The Walking Dead. It's like if The Walking Dead came to Riverdale.
Yeah.
No, the heart is just spilling out of this book. Like, it really is, too. Like, I mean, the character moments are so awesome in this book.
Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, the comic is different than the show. There are some similarities. They have a similar like aesthetic style between the time period in the comic and what they portray in the show. But the comic is much more like Lovecraftian, like H.P. Lovecraft style, like eldritch monsters and like unspeakable evils than the show gets into, and it's also like a fascinating thing on its own.
Very cool.
Yeah, that was out of left field. I was not expecting Archie on this list, but no, I'm happy you brought it up. Yeah, it's so great that we got to talk about it.
We might get more of both of them, but I would just be happy with one more of each of them at this point.
Yeah, no, I got my fingers crossed that we're going to get more. I really do. I mean, and of the things on our list, I think that's probably the best chance of one coming back.
Right.
Okay, so I'm gonna try and get my second one done quick. It's a Batman thing. Shocker. Hey, Zach's bringing up Batman. Okay, so I think everybody's familiar with like Long Halloween and Dark Victory, right? By Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale.
Right.
Which I love those books. But there's another trade that came out before that has it has a collection of 3 stories that they collaborated on for Batman before Long Halloween came out. So it's a trade called Haunted Night, and basically this was 3 one-shot specials that they did for Legends of the Dark Knight. Now this is where it's going to get confusing. They're all Halloween specials that take place on Halloween. So don't try and get too much into continuity here because it's not going to make any sense, right? Don't try and think about like where this fits into Long Halloween and Dark Victory, right? Because between the two of them, they've crafted, I think, 6 years of Halloween stories in Batman's career. But the reason I like these stories and why I would like one more of these one-shots is that they take kind of like little, like lesser used villains. So like the first one is a book called Fear that used the Scarecrow. And the second one was a book called Madness that was maybe one of the best Mad Hatter stories in comics. Yes, one exists. So I just like, I really, really like these. And I think that it would be cool if we got kind of another one that focused on another like lesser known bad guy. So I was thinking about like, he's not that he's lesser known, but like he doesn't get touched in Long Halloween and Dark Victory much. They don't really use the Penguin much. But the other one that I was thinking about was that in Long Halloween, there's all of this hinting of Batman and Calendar Man having like this long history together. And we never actually see any adventure where he takes on like that Hannibal Lecter version of Calendar Man, Right. So I thought it'd be cool if they got to do an issue that was like one of that stories of Batman trying to bring down that version of Calendar Man, just to sort of like kind of have it like tangentially sort of connected to Dark Victory and Long Halloween if you wanted. But Doesn't need to be. So that's my Batman story on the list.
Very good.
So
Yeah, I was expecting it. I was very much expecting it.
oh, everybody was, I'm sure of it. All right, Tommy, you're up. You're number one.
This was very difficult for me. I know I'm talking about how hard this whole thing was to me, but I had fun doing it regardless of how difficult it was. But I kept coming up with roadblocks. Like, for example, I thought about New Gods because I came across something that told me that I think Kirby's original run was very stunted, even though they pulled it like from different directions. But they revisited the book enough, and we've seen enough of his characters get mapped out to an extent in which I don't think we need another book. It'd be nice, but there's no way in hell we're not going to get another Fourth World or New God story by not having a additional book. Then I thought about JSA. I loved Jeff Johns' run, and I think they should map out the characters and not put them in an alternate universe. But who knows what the future holds for DC and the members of the JSA, especially with Stargirl having her own show and directly dealing with that. So there's hope in that. So I didn't talk JSA. But then I remembered what Zach gave me years ago. And this is Gargoyles Bad Guys.
Okay.
It was fun. It's almost, in a way, a weird part or extra series or spin-off, if you will, from Gargoyles the Animated, in which 5 characters from the show, with the exception of one per se, are banded together and become a group on their own. It's similar to Secret Six, but not as dastardly. They almost become heroes as a result of their group.
Right.
But they're all adversaries of the Gargoyles.
Okay.
It brings back Hunter, Yama, Matrix, Dingo, and Fang.
Yeah.
Now, unless you've seen the show, these names won't mean anything to you. But if you've seen the show, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And it's weird how Weissman plucked these 5 characters in order to make a story just exclusively about them and where they went as a result of crossing the Gargoyles and where their future holds. I would love to see another issue, if not another whole series, like what he did in the trade that Zach gave me. Very provocative. It shows you how much material could be mined from the universe of Gargoyles without using the Gargoyle, at least the core 5 group. That's what I would like to see another issue of. Bad Guys by Greg Weissman.
Yeah, it's a great book. It really is a great book. I love it. Yeah, no, it's this was, I think we mentioned like in our spotlight of Gargoyles episode, where like he had ideas for like spin-offs of the show, and I think this was, none of them got made, but this was, the Bad Guys was like sort of the closest I think they got to doing a spin-off of Gargoyles, and I think it kind of comes through reading it that this was like something he was really attached to. I think like he really liked this idea of doing kind of a Dirty Dozen, like bad guy story that where they are anti-heroes, kind of heroes and everything. I'm also impressed also that 3 of us all had like a bad guy book on our list.
Yeah. I think we all had a bad guy list on there.
Yeah.
But no, I just found it to be really, I just completely forgot about it, and I looked at it, and it ends again with just a new beginning for these people, in which they could have mined out tremendously, all of which, or to me, are damn near scumbags. Right. Just how it resolves with each of them. But it's just dipping a toe in a whole universe that we never get to see, you know?
Yeah. No, it's a great book. Most likely out of print at this point, and it was like a black and white, like digest size book. But track it down if you can.
Oh no, here's the crazy part. I did a random Amazon search for it just to see if we come up. They're selling it like for upwards of $200 on Amazon.
Are they really?
I wouldn't doubt it.
Wow.
Which is insane. Yeah. It's like it's out of print, but I didn't know it was that hard to come by as far as the direct demand for people wanting to read this particular book. So if you can't get it, I look for it digitally. If you can't get it on, if you don't have $300 to spare for
Right.
this Weissman,
Yeah.
this Weissman gem. But yeah,
Yeah, it's terrific. I love it.
yeah.
All right, Frank, what's your number one?
All right, so for me, it was odd because it's one of the things where it's technically the issue. It's a canceled series that technically the next issue did come out. It just took over about 40 years or more for it to come out.
Okay, I can't wait to hear what this is.
All right, so the Joker series from the 70s, right? It goes from issue 1 to issue 9, right? And issue 9 came out on, let me see here. I have it written down. It came out on June 14th, 1976. That's when it hit the spinner rack, was in 76.
Okay.
So it was
Great year.
Right. So bicentennial. So the issue is like the cover. It's an issue with Catwoman and the Joker, and that's what the whole thing is about. Is it's a cat themed crime. Blah 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 blah. Anyway, the end of it teases that coming up in issue 10, it's going to be starting with a 3-parter of the Joker basically taking on the Justice League, right?
Mm-hmm.
So 10 is never released, and then within the last year, they put out the Bronze Age Joker Omnibus, which they print issue 10. Now, issue 10 is the Joker is going to be lobotomized at Arkham Asylum. He gets a visit from a Lewis Cipher.
Okay.
If you know your Lewis Cipher or your Lou Cipher or Louis Cipher, it's
Lou Cipher, yeah.
It's the devil, right, or it's a demon. And oddly enough, in this story, this demon or this devil looks like Elton John from the 70s. I don't know why.
Ooh.
But
Okay.
he does, and he basically makes a deal with the Joker, like, I'll get you out of here, So anyway, I got to read it. They had it released, they released it on Comixology. It's in this omnibus. I didn't pick up the omnibus yet. I'm not a big fan of omnibus. Or omnibuy because they're just unwieldy. But I wanted to read this issue, so I read it on Comixology, and it's, granted, it's a book about the Joker. We've talked about this comic before and how odd it is, the fact that, DC took a chance on this homicidal villain as the main character in this book. But this whole issue is basically the Joker. He just kills members of the Justice League for the 22 pages he's in. And some of it's really, and some of it, especially for 76, is pretty, like, for the time it would have come out, is pretty, like, some of the deaths are pretty, like, intense.
Right.
So it's one of those things where I was amazed, like, they would have gotten away with doing what they did, because I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but like I said, they're pretty intense, gruesome deaths. And then the thing about it is, well, there's supposed to be 2 more issues. There's supposed to be an 11-12. So I'm technically bending the rules a bit because I got my 10 and now I want 11 and 12. And I don't know if there's even scripts for them, because Marty Pasco is the one that wrote the issues. He wrote pretty much the entire series, I believe. And then he just recently passed away. So I don't know if there's any plans to, like, try and see about getting 11, 12. But I highly recommend reading the issue 10 itself. If you haven't read any of the other Joker stuff, you don't really have to. But it's an amazing issue for something that took 40 years to come out.
Huh. Okay. This sounds like you made up the whole thing.
No, I know.
This doesn't sound real.
Yeah. But yeah, it's the issue's called, what's the issue? It's 99 and 99 tenths of 100% dead is what it's called. It's him. And it's literally, like I said, the Joker basically kills, let me see, it's Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Arrow, and Black Canary. Those are his first victims in this first parter.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That blows me away that in 76 that they wrote that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, some of it reminded me of, like, when we've seen character deaths and stuff. It was just like, it reminded me of some of the stuff that was in, and if you have never read it, I highly recommend this too. It's when Jeff Loeb was doing Superman, Batman, in the story arc with the Carlos Pacheco stuff about the Legion of Supervillains coming back and altering their origins.
Mm.
There's some really, like, intense deaths in that as well, and it's along those lines. But this was 76, so it's not like it was something more recent.
Oh, but I love that storyline too in Batman Superman. Oh, I wish they animate that. Yeah, it was that dark.
Yeah, it's that dark.
Oh, man.
So yeah, it's pretty dark. Some of the Justice League members die in horrific ways. So it's one of again, for 76, I was really surprised. But yeah, it took, like I said, 76 to just last year it took for it to come out. And then I've heard nothing since then about if they intend to like at least, put up scripts or, someone else is going to draw from the scripts that he did, or if he even completed the next 2 issues. I don't even know.
Okay. All right. Wow. Okay. So my number one, I might need a spotter here from Clifton, a little bit. Frank, maybe you can help spot a little bit on this one too. So I pick, the Dreamwave Transformers ongoing.
Okay.
Right. I positively loved this series and what this company was doing with Transformers. So I'm going to go back really quick to it started as a mini series that like kind of brought like Transformers like back in the comics, which that had been absent for years and years and years and years and years. So this is about like, I'm thinking like 2002 was when the first one came out, give or take, right? The second one was a book called War and Peace. So this is one, if you ever find it at a con, please pick it up. I'm telling you, it's awesome. And I don't think it's not in print anywhere. So, but basically that opens up with like the Autobots and the Decepticons are like fighting like in the snow mountains, in the American, Northwest back there. Thank you, Frank. And then so they're in the middle of the fight, and then basically a ship lands and swarms of both Autobots and Decepticons come out. So it's like Ultra Magnus and some of the other like Seekers and stuff like that. And then Shockwave comes out and basically says, hey, while you guys were all here on Earth fighting, like basically I unified Cybertron and the war's over. And all of you guys here on Earth are being arrested for war crimes.
Oh, wow.
Right. And that's sort of like that miniseries that takes place. So this is like if you were ever a Transformers fan and you got annoyed when the humans showed up, read this miniseries because there's not a person anywhere in this book. Right. So, but out of this awesome miniseries, like they started doing like an ongoing, right? And this was written by a writer named Brad Mick, who changed like midway through and started using his real name, which I think is like James McDonough, I think. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. So the ongoing went for 10 issues, technically 11, because there was an issue 0. And the issue 0 is like really important here because it was sort of a guidebook a little bit. And it kind of gave you an inkling of like which way the wind was going to be blowing in the ongoing. So like he's doing a lot of setup stuff for like where was Megatron during the miniseries, and kind of does a lot of groundwork for what he was setting up. The first arc in the ongoing was not my favorite. It was a Sunstorm arc, but the second one was like a reimagining of the Insecticons and was done as sort of like a zombie movie.
Okay.
Which I thought was awesome. So I want like an 80-page giant for this just to wrap up everything. I don't quite know, like, so Clifton, this is why I wanted to bring you in on this, right? Because Dreamwave, had some self-inflicted wounds,
right?
I'll say,
like, I'm not gonna go into details. I'll just say, like, there's been a lot of allegations, about Dreamwave's business practices from creators that they hired.
Yes,
and that's pretty much all you need to know,
right? So, but there is some, like, I don't quite know what happened to the rights of like who got the rights for this, because now
the Transformers books that they created,
right. So that's
specifically just those titles,
because IEW is currently has the Transformers license, and I think there was an attempt to maybe reprint the ongoing that they had done and actually put it in trade, because that stuff was never traded. But then I think that there was, as is with comics, sometimes like this weird dispute, like rights dispute issue and everything. So this stuff didn't get traded. Only the miniseries got traded. But it's awesome. It's awesome. I saw it actually at a convention last year, and I own this stuff, and I almost rebought it. Like, I like it so much. So that's my number one. So okay. So really quick. So to wrap up, let's just, so we did, what do we want for one issue more? So let's just take it a step further. So of everything that we mentioned, what do you think has the potential for actually like another series? Like, what deserves another go round as a series versus an issue? And I throw it up to whoever wants to start off.
I think Planetary is probably the best.
Oh, Planetary.
Yeah, I think Planetary is the best choice of actually getting another series.
Okay.
Yeah. The Exploits of Elijah Snow. I can't wait for that.
Yeah, I think that would be the best one. I mean, I think that'd be the best choice.
Okay.
But I don't know. Archie, Afterlife.
That's my pick. That's my pick. That's what I say. I say I want Afterlife with Archie. I want more of that.
I think we would definitely get that before we get Planetary.
No, we'll definitely get that. I'd argue to say we can see that in Riverdale. Jeez.
Right. Clifton, you got one?
I think a lot of them are still open for, they still have ground that they can cover. A lot of Superior Foes, Gotham Central, Planetary.
Yeah.
I think they all still got traction.
Yeah.
If somebody wanted to do them.
Gotham Central is still the one that I'm still shocked at this point. Like to date, there's not been any return to it. Like that blows me away.
I also, me too, but I also think that it's one of those things where I wouldn't want to see it without, Brubaker and
Rucka.
Thank you.
Rucka.
Without the two of them, I wouldn't want to read it. But my other thing about it, the other thing is, as much as I want those issues with the Joker, I'm amazed that there isn't an ongoing Joker series.
Right. Especially right now.
Especially right now. As popular as the character is, like, his popularity has never really, I know, I'm not saying, I'm just saying.
Yeah,
but he's undisputably popular.
Right, exactly. Right, yeah. We can't dispute that. Whether we want it or whether we don't want it, I'm just saying, I'm surprised they haven't attempted it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, but the way DC's going at what their interpretation of the Joker is now, I say hold your breath. You won't get blue before you'll see a regular publication of the Joker, just because of how many different interpretations we're getting of it, and how much he's replaced Darkseid as the big bad now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just saying.
I think he predates Darkseid as the big bad also. I think Darkseid as the big bad guy is relatively recent.
No, not so much that of who he is, just more along the lines of his omnipresent threat across the world, as opposed to just scaring Gotham citizens.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it's supposedly, from what I've heard, I think Jeff Loeb is going back to writing again. So, I mean, I would not be surprised if he and Sale did not team up again for something. I don't know if it's Batman, but, they may team up for something again, because, I mean, they're too good together, I think.
Yeah.
So. Anyway, all right, so tell us in the comments which comic book you would bring back for one more issue, and while you're there, if there's a topic you'd like to hear us discuss, go ahead and leave a suggestion, and we just might use it on the air. You'll also find notes and links, as well as all of our past episodes on letmeknowhowitis.com. You can also find a link to our YouTube channel. We'd appreciate it if you would subscribe there as well. And finally, don't forget to like us on Facebook at facebook.com/letmeknowhowitis and follow us on Twitter at our show's initials LMKHII. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next time.